I'm watching you. Big brother.
Technically, there is no war going on between the members of the Endless. That's because their rules of existence prevent them from doing such things, but to call the dynamic between dream and desire anything else would be inaccurate, because in a way, they have been at war for millennia. Sure, it's not the kind of all flags, no surrender warfare that we're familiar with, but it's the closest thing to that for two entities who are literally not allowed to even touch each other with malevolence. So, in this video, we'll be taking a look at the endless war between dream and desire and track how it shapes the narrative of the Sandman. Spoiler warning for those of you who haven't read the graphic novels, because there's going to be a lot of those coming your way. Now that that's out of the way, let's get right into it.
I have a new one.
The Inception. Desire betrays Dream. It all begins at an interstellar gathering of the divine, where Dream learns that his siblings aren't about what they say they're about. A long time before Calliope or Nada, Dream's mortal love was a Malthusian woman called Kilela. She was one of the first sentient beings to discover the power of will, and she used it alongside 4 others to guide her civilization into progress. Kilela learned, through her application of what she calls the glow, that willpower has the ability to allow said glow to take solid form. When she applied this concept to her dreams, she ended up meeting the Dream King himself, and Morpheus was instantly enamored by her. He decided to make Kilela his companion, but he never made any effort to actually define their relationship because he realized that his relationship was fueled purely by desire. That is why, in the beginning, Morpheus held Desire in high regard. He was thankful to them and thought of them as a friend for bringing him one of his greatest loves, because in Morpheus's mind, desire and love were one and the same. When this interstellar gathering of the divine was called to lay down the law for how the universe would work, Morpheus took Kilela with him so he could introduce her to his friends and family. In particular, he was looking forward to her meeting Desire, the very concept that brought them together. However, from the moment these two characters met, it was clear that Desire didn't have any intention of bringing love to Morpheus's life. All they wanted was to make him thirst and hunger after a mortal, and thereby break their sacred oath in a way that could never be reconciled. They infected Morpheus with the desire for Kilela, and then endeavored to prove to Dream that even a dream as sweet as this can have a bitter ending because of them. You see, Desire is different from the eldest 4 Endless in a key way. They believe that their purpose in life is to interfere in mortal affairs, because how else would they be able to grant people what they desire most in the moment they desire it? Desire is a rather fleeting emotion after all. The thing desired today can become the object of one's hatred the very next day, and in fact, there is a Sandman universe tale that depicts them doing exactly that. But this contradiction we brought up is one Desire inflicted a mortal with. When they decided to toy with one of their own, they brought upon themselves the ire of Dream, and it's not a trifling matter. After Kilela spends some time at the palace for the gathering and gets to see many of Dream's family members, she comes across a man who is radiant like a sun. Radiant like her sun, actually, or rather the sun that illuminated her star system and brought her to life. This sun, called Sto-Oa, engages in a conversation with Kilela where it becomes painfully clear that she's more attached to Morpheus than he is to her. Morpheus hasn't even bothered to put a label on their relationship, and he barely has the capacity to express emotions. But Sto-Oa was a different kind of being. His passion and clarity and excitable nature was a breath of fresh air for Kilela, and once they started talking to each other, Dream's relationship with her was already dead. After taking her to a semi-secluded balcony, Sto-Oa puts the moves on Kilela, which she reacts to with surprise, but there's no hesitation in her because she reciprocates his desire and accepts him as a lover above Morpheus. Kilela had become overwhelmed by the knowledge of being in love with Dream. She realized she had entered a world she couldn't comprehend, and it terrified her. But Sto-Oa was someone she knew, someone she had been dependent on since the moment she was conceived, so while loving Dream itself was incomprehensible to her, settling for the embodiment of a star was more in her wheelhouse. And it was only Dream who realized that her and Sto-Oa's kiss was motivated not by love, as he thought, but by desire. Dream witnesses the woman who was supposed to be his give her love freely to another. You can call it whatever you want, a passionate mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment, but the fact was that she betrayed him. And despite being the embodiment of imagination itself, Dream was a real stickler for the rules back then. He took his leave of the interstellar gathering earlier than anticipated, but not before telling Desire, rather sternly, that they were not friends. Friends didn't do what Desire just did to him, so Dream told his sister brother to stay out of his business for good. The Endless weren't supposed to interfere in each other's affairs or with mortals' life trajectories anyways, so his warning was within the laws of their existence. But of course, Desire doesn't like to play by the rules. Desire makes up her own rules, and they endeavored to turn Morpheus's personal life into hell on that day. As they said to Despair in the 7th episode of The Sandman Season 1, Desire believes that Dream's superiority is entirely misplaced. Their belief is that dreams are nothing more than the echoes of the despair and desire of mortals, and they hate the fact that Dream acts as if he's above those things when he clearly isn't. This is why Desire's greatest desire is to see the Sandman scattered to the wind, because then, and only then, will they have proved their point. And it's to this end that they continue to meddle with his love life for several millennia, despite knowing full well what the consequences will be. The many games that Desire play, how they instigate conflict within the Endless. We're sure Desire made several attempts to instigate Dream into violating existential laws, but here we will speak of 3 such attempts that nearly succeeded. The first is the story of Alienora. A long time ago, long before the Endless became the full-fledged divine entities they are today, a trio of elder gods invaded Death's domain. They imprisoned the Dream Lord in his own castle and endeavored to steal his power for themselves. In a desperate bid to free himself, Dream carved the sigils of his siblings with his own hand into his prison cell's wall and proceeded to ask each of them for help. To his surprise, Desire was the only one that responded. Desire told Dream they'd help him by sending him a helper. The only catch is, this helper would be created by them, and there was a strong chance that what happened between Dream and Kalela would transpire between them as well. Morpheus rejected Desire's help because he didn't want that to happen, but in the end he was powerless to help himself, and Desire, and their creation, was the only reason he survived. Desire created a beautiful maiden warrior called Alienora to assist Dream's escape. The pair fought off those elder gods and defeated them after putting in a lot of work. Alienora was injured and incurred a wound on her cheek from one of those elder gods' scorpion whip. This was foreshadowing for the day Morpheus himself would be injured, but that day was still far away. Dream fashioned his helm and the gates to his realm from their corpses, with the former becoming his primary symbol of office. And he took Alienora as his lover, as Desire had predicted. But after spending a few years with her, Dream grew out of that love and told Alienora that she must leave him so that he could concentrate on his duties. She refused because she'd spent so much time in the dreaming that she was afraid she wouldn't survive the waking world. So Dream made her a land of her own and gave her the first Dreamstone to sustain it. He told Alienora that she could live there as long as she wished and create whatever she wished with her imagination. But the day she felt like she should die, all she'd have to do was break the stone and summon him. Dream would unmake her world and subsume her within himself. She never took him up on his offer and died in peace and longing, but her land turned into a refuge for troubled young women all across existence. It's in Alienora's land that Barbie ends up when she's dreaming, and the porpentine she discovers with her dream pet Ten Bones is actually Dream's Dreamstone. In the novels, things play out a lot differently when compared to the show, where the land becomes ground zero for the death of a dream vortex. That's because, in the novels, when Dream arrives to reabsorb the land, he gets to have a quick chat with Alienora. The conversation is both cathartic and painful for him, and this was Desire's goal in creating Alienora in the first place. They wanted Dream to suffer from a lack of true love, so they kept meddling in his love life, creating desires for mortals within him, which is a big taboo for the Endless. We can assume that it was Desire who made Dream feel attracted to the muse Calliope and birth Orpheus with her, but Dream didn't really think about either of them for a long time. It was only when Orpheus was removed from his place of rest as an immortal head that he involved himself in his rescue, and the last time Dream appeared to Calliope, it was to save her from a horrible person whose story we see in the special episode of Sandman's first season. The second woman that tripped up Dream something proper was Nada. Nada was the queen of a civilization called the First People, which existed before humanity migrated out of Africa. Nada's culture was aware of the existence of the Endless and also the rules by which they were bound. She was aware of the fact that her romance with Dream would bring great tragedy to her people, but she didn't know the extent of it. When an asteroid wiped out her entire civilization as punishment for her violating the taboo, she died, and it was her soul that Dream offered to make the Queen of Dreams. But Nada rejected him, and so Dream condemned her to hell for 10,000 years. He didn't feel that his act was unjust, but he realized that it wasn't fair a little too late. Desire considered Nada to be a failure of a project because, much like Dream's previous lovers, she had failed to bring true change within him. However, their assertions would be proven false 10,000 years later when Dream, after encountering Nada in hell and having a conversation about it with Death, decided to free her. This decision was what set into motion the chain of events that led to his demise, but Nada herself served as but a spark for the flame that engulfed him. The third major event we want to discuss with you guys is the bet that Dream and Despair make over the fate of a man called Joshua Norton. Joshua Norton was a real person for starters. He existed in 19th century America and was a failing businessman before he gained fame as Norton I, Emperor of the United States. Of course, his proclamation of being emperor wasn't valid, but in many ways it saved Joshua from the pits of despair, and he died not as a complete madman, but as something of a revered local hero. The Sandman uses this tale and weaves it around the cosmic functions of the endless. Despair, knowing that Norton was on the verge of experiencing the full weight of, well, her, makes a wager with Dream. This wager is rooted in her and Desire's shared belief that their cosmic roles are the kernels for mortal dreams. Morpheus accepted the challenge and endeavored to prove them wrong because to him, it was a dream that led to one's despair and desire. So what he did was quite simple. He placed Norton in a waking dream where he made him believe that he wasn't a failing businessman, but a rising emperor. Norton I's lifetime was spent doing things that one would expect out of an entity like delirium. On many occasions, he declared the US Congress to have been abolished and tried to remove the existence of the Democrats and the Republicans. Norton issued several edicts that many of the general populace considered to be insane. He even propositioned Queen Victoria at a certain point of time, the results of which were obviously unsuccessful. But throughout his waking dream, not once did he give in to the despair of being a failure. Heck, he even scared Delirium with his delusions because Delirium was supposed to make a person break down in despair. But Norton's delirium was what kept him alive and happy, so Delirium denied him entry into her realm, for his insanity was what was keeping him sane. When he finally died, Death came to him and told him that of all the rulers that ever existed, she liked him best, and thus did Dream prove his point to his younger siblings. It will be interesting to see if the show adapts this tale before it takes its final bow, but the point we're trying to make here is Morpheus's dream trumped the cosmic roles of both despair and desire, and this is probably the only time he truly won a battle against his most hated sibling. Shortly after the Norton affair, Dream undertook a long and draining journey which made him susceptible to the amateur arcana of one Roderick Burgess. In the novels, he spent 70 years as Burgess's prisoner, but in the show it was well over a century. When he woke up, he saw that the entire universe had changed, not just the mortal world, but his domain as well. And it was this period of imprisonment that Desire exploited to come up with their ultimate plan to destroy their elder sibling.
I am only sorry I won't be here to see Rose Walker.
Desire's best shot in millennia. Dream and Rose Walker. When Dream was captured, many people of the world were still sleeping. They ended up sleeping for the entire duration of his imprisonment, and their curious condition was called encephalitis lethargia, aka the sleepy sickness. Most patients of the sickness died by the time he woke up, save one, Unity Kincaid. When she went under, Unity was earmarked to become the dream vortex of the current generation. A dream vortex is essentially a being who brings in the dreams of everyone and everything around them to themselves, and their power can rival even Morpheus's if left unchecked. While she was sleeping, Unity was visited by Desire, who was frustrated that a manipulation-worthy vortex had gone under in such a fashion, but her sickness inspired Desire with their sickest idea to date. They used their powers to create a child within Unity, so that the vortex's gene could be passed down to her children. And the person who actually became the Dream Vortex was Unity's granddaughter, Rose Walker, a great-granddaughter in the TV series. In Netflix's Sandman, Desire visits Unity in her dreams and has a full-fledged relationship with her in order to create Rose, but in the novels, the implications of their visit are much darker. However, the end result of both is the exact same. When Rose comes into her power, Dream is thrown into the battle of his life, for he must get her on his side to capture his escaped servants and then kill her without dying himself. It proves a near impossible task, and he's almost derailed by the efforts of the Corinthian, but Dream finally manages to get Rose exactly where he wants her. In that moment, Unity Kincaid enters the dreaming after a long absence and takes over the role of Vortex from her descendant. She then proceeds to take her own life, destroying the threat of the Vortex but leaving Morpheus with an important realization. See, the Vortex took on the form of a glass heart in the dreaming. When Unity was convincing Rose to let her have it, she told her to reach into her body and give her the heart. Dream immediately recognized it as Desire's sigil, and after dealing with the Vortex problem, he visited his sister brother's realm and warned them against pulling something like this ever again. Morpheus told them that if they interfered in his affairs ever again, that he would forget their family and kill them himself. And this was the biggest mistake of his life. When Dream breaks Nada out of her prison, he has a conversation with her. This conversation is skipped over in the novels, but the show actually gives it to us, which is one of those rare cases where an adaptation enhances the source material. Nada tells the Dream Lord that what he had for her wasn't love, because no lover would leave their beloved in hell for 10,000 years. All she was to him was the object of his desire, and this seemed to switch a button on in Dream's mind. He realizes that she's correct, and he takes this realization to heart. After Nada's departure, he commands his staff to never mention her name again in his presence and to demolish the wing he'd created for her within his palace. His immature belief that he loved Nada and the reality of his desire send him spiraling into the emotion embodied by his second youngest sister. And this despair is symbolized by the fact that it reigns all throughout the dreaming. When Dream is approached by Delirium to help her locate destruction, he agrees to help her, but not because he wants to see his brother again. He wants to go to Earth to find Nada to show her that he truly did love her, and it's this desire that leads to his downfall. The end of a dream and the beginning of another. The end of the endless war. Dream's journey to find destruction sees him do many uncharacteristic things. He starts apologizing to people, for example, something he never did before he was imprisoned. He assists Delirium with her quest out of selfish desire at first, but after seeing the effect it has on her, he decides to help her earnestly. It's this decision that inevitably causes the very thing Desire had been trying to do for millennia, and that's getting Dream to spill family blood. In order to find destruction, Dream learns that he must use an oracle, but the oracle he must use isn't just any oracle, it has to be one that's related to the family. As soon as he hears this, he realizes that he has to visit his son Orpheus, the same son he promised to never see again. And he also knows that Orpheus will only give him the answers he seeks in exchange for a boon, the boon of ending his life. At this point, you're probably aware of the Orpheus myth. He was a demigod who gained the favor of Apollo and was renowned throughout ancient Greece as the best singer in history. When Orpheus played his lyre, the song he produced was so powerful that even the fates cried after hearing it. But for all his skill and talent, Orpheus was still just a man, and a young one at that. The demise of his beloved Eurydice sends him into frenzy, and he vows to bring her back from the dead as opposed to doing the natural thing. He traverses the underworld and strikes a bargain with Hades himself, but due to his humanity, Orpheus can't help but break the terms of the bargain. He's supposed to lead her out of hell without turning around, trusting that Hades would hold up his end of the bargain, but of course, he has to turn and look at his love. For that, he's cursed with immortality, and his body is ripped apart by the cult of Dionysus, one of his former patrons. Only his head survives, which his father gets placed on an island with a priesthood dedicated to protecting him. Since that day, though Orpheus's manor remains full of life, his desire becomes his own demise. And that's the boon he asks for when his father comes seeking destruction. After meeting with his brother, Dream fulfills his end of the bargain and drives his hand through his own son's head. But the blood of his child doesn't leave his hands as easily as perhaps he thought it would, and he breaks down in a way he hasn't broken down ever before. At the same time, the kindly ones discover his violation of endless law and set out to collect his life as punishment. This is what the final third of the Sandman series focuses on. Dream's attempts to ensure that his demise does not upset the cosmic order, and his reconciliation with the fact that, despite being a divine entity, he too was capable of making mortal mistakes. When Desire learns that Morpheus killed his son, they know they should feel triumphant. This is what they'd been working towards, after all, the downfall of their brother and the lessons he learns from it. But for some reason, Desire feels scared instead of jubilant. The nature of Desire is ever shifting, you see. At one moment they want something and they will spend their eternal life working towards making that thing happen, but the moment it does, Desire comes to realize how meaningless it was, because Desire is in the end an ephemeral emotion. It dissipates as quickly as it was created once it's been fulfilled, and that's why Desire became scared upon Orpheus's demise. It's only when a desire is acted upon and completed that one contemplates the consequences of it. That's the exact conundrum that affects Desire of the Endless, despite having won their war. They knew that if Morpheus were to get inextricably involved with mortals, sooner or later, the kindly ones would come for him. And yet, in the end, they feel sadness and remorse for being the cause of their brother's demise. The Endless War was a gigantic metaphor for how human emotions permeate all of creation and how they can lead to wondrous and terrifying things. It's also about how we don't know the complete effects of our own actions long after the act itself is faded from history and turned to dust, like so many kernels of sand. Marvelous verdict! And that's all for this one. Don't forget to like and share this video with your fellow Sandman enthusiasts, and also tell them to subscribe to Marvelous Videos for more Sandman content like this here video. Let us know your thoughts on this silent war between two endless siblings in the comments down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe, and remember, desire can feel amazing in the moment, but feel terrible every moment after you fulfill it. So tread with caution the next time you feel them creeping up on your psyche, huh? Because even desire can regret the desire they inspire, just like they did at the end of this quote-unquote war.